Hi guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of Let's Chat Ethics. I'm your co-host Oriana.
And I'm your other co-host Amanda. And from us at Let's Chat Ethics, we want to send our condolences to the families of the victims of the two shootings that have taken place this week in the United States.
Yes, our condolences are with all the families and people who have been affected by these horrific hate crimes. So this week we're actually going to be talking about something a bit different, AI and art, which is something that, I know Amanda and I are super into, and wanted to speak about the recent auction at Christie's by the artist Beeple called 5,000 Days that ended up selling for $70 million. And it was kind of the first digital piece of artwork to sell for such a extraordinarily high price, and especially at such a renowned auction house such as Christie's. So I actually interned at Christie's auction house about 5 years ago for 1 year in their New York office, and at the time I never would have expected a piece of art, digital art, to sell for such an extraordinarily high price, or even for a piece of digital art to get to auction like this. And I think what's most fascinating about it from my perspective is that that you're essentially paying for a non-fungible token for the digital artwork, which guarantees its authenticity, and it's essentially kind of buying the IP of the artist, Beeple. So, I mean, you can look at this two ways. It's either absolutely incredible and amazing that, a piece of digital art has got such recognition and sold for such a high price. And, obviously digital art has many amazing qualities, but also you can also see the flip side where it's actually crazy that someone has essentially bought an IP for 70 million. And, I guess historically with digital art, it's never been able to really have this authenticity. So the cryptocurrency and non-fungible tokens allow it to have, that ownership and that right. So yeah, I feel like it's a very interesting topic, and I'm sure loads of people have different opinions on, firstly, the price that it sold for, and secondly, I guess the ownership, like who owns it really. So yeah, Amanda, what were your thoughts on this?
When I first saw the article, I was a bit puzzled because I don't want to devalue digital art. I think, of course, it's beautiful and it's just as meaningful, but to think of it selling for almost $70 million for something that is so intangible, and even the article already has a lot of pictures, and I don't know. I tend to think that, like, partly the point of owning a piece of art for me is that, like, I could be the only one who gets to look at it, and I just love this so much. Whereas with digital art, it's so easy to, I guess, share and reproduce. And I understand that they're using blockchain, which I guess we should talk about in a future episode, because that's very
Yeah, we need a blockchain expert on here because I don't know enough.
Yeah, Auntie Griffin, we're looking at you if you're listening.
Yes, Anne, we need you back.
But yeah, I don't know, the especially for visual art, it just feels like, is it especially for visual art? It just seems so insane to be that. I mean, I guess even the idea of having $70 million to spend on any kind of art, but specifically to pay 70 million, and I mean,
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, because I was thinking about how when Christie sold the Leonardo da Vinci painting about 4 years ago now, that went for $450 million, like the most expensive piece of art to ever go at auction, which obviously everyone was like, that's an obscene amount of money to spend on a piece of art. However, I could also come from the angle of us, but it is Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah.
And so that's an original piece of art that is so, you know, renowned and well known,
and it's
got historical value, and you can hold. Do you know? I know
yeah,
what you mean.
it's like
I think for me it would be
physical.
the physical touch, and it could be like, this is mine. If I want to hang it in my bedroom, that 450 million, it can hang on the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
If I want to put it in my own personal museum, I can. But I know what you mean. I think it's a whole different way of understanding the art market and understanding ownership, I guess, through intellectual property and blockchain and these non-fungible tokens. I personally, even if I had 70 million, I don't think I would be dropping it on a piece of digital art. No disrespect to digital art, because I think digital art is great, but I'm the same. I would want the physical piece to be like, see this was painted by Leonardo da Vinci X amount of years ago. So
yeah, I think part of it for me with the digital aspect is that I think of like the thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures that I've taken with my phone and my digital camera, and they're all sitting in some directory in my computer, and I never look at them except when my computer's telling me that I need more storage, and then I'm like, right, let's get rid of some of these, and then I spend hours actually going through these pictures, right? And that's kind of how I feel about digital art, that there's no, like, I mean, of course there are ways of displaying it, right? But as something that you sort of have in your house or something like that, I feel like it sort of loses what for me is the point of art, I guess, which is maybe beauty, maybe the expression of something. And if it's just kind of sitting on a machine somewhere, even if you have it as your, like, I don't know, desktop screensaver, or you've got some like giant screen in your living room that's sort of displaying. So this artwork is made up of 5,000 sort of pictures. So I guess it took him 13 years to make it, right? So for 13 years, every day you could look at a different picture and have a different piece of artwork in your house. Maybe when you think about it in those terms, it's actually pretty cheap, you know.
I was just gonna say, I wonder. I would love to know who bought it. I don't think we currently know who the buyer was. I think they're probably likely to keep anonymous. I don't know, but I just wonder, unless the buyer is has a museum collection, or is in, has a gallery, that they're going to actually actively display this work. I'm just like, what? I feel like what's happening with it? It just, I think it's quite it's just crazy to me. I think I could see the potential in, if you wanted that art to put in, somewhere like the MoMA, or
that I absolutely would get.
I would get that as well. But I guess if you're like a private collector that doesn't have a gallery or a museum, I just think it's quite. I would just love to meet the person, to ask them, what was it about this particularly over anything else that made them decide? Because I think a lot of times, especially with like modern art, it's always kind of, people are drawn into more of the philosophy behind it, aren't they? Because a lot of I hear a lot of people shitting on modern art, like it's just a white canvas with a dot in the middle, which yes, it can be.
The duct-taped banana.
Yes, the banana at the Miami Basil. Yeah, I think it's just all those things. Like, I fully get it, but I'm one of those people who genuinely love a lot of modern art, because I like to hear the philosophy behind it, and then you get the historical context of what the artists were going through at the time, why they decided to do that random dot in the middle of the painting. I feel some of art obviously isn't always about the beauty anymore, is it? It can be more about, like, I guess, the philosophy, but yeah.
I mean, I like modern art. I love as you might know, I love sort of like the old masters and that sort of thing, but I actually do really love modern art as well. And I think a lot of it for me, I mean, it is about the beauty, but maybe in a different way than the way that I love sort of like religious paintings. I just I love me a good painting of Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I think about modern art, it's more maybe about the sort of impact that the piece might have, which
I think a lot of it's like meant to cause some kind of outrage or some kind of it's meant to cause some kind of emotion. I think the fact people do get actually angry at modern art. I've had so many people when I was interning at Christmas, so many people were like, I can't believe that something would sell for literally that much money and it's so shit, and it's just like, you know, literally it's just like a banana on the
my
floor.
5-year-old could paint that.
Like people getting excited. I'm like, this is what the artist wants. They're invoking rage in you. That's what they want. They want something.
Yeah, exactly. I think my brother was telling me yesterday. So my brother really hates modern art, and he's just one of. I mean, not all modern art. I guess this, you know, what we think about modern art is
like contemporary,
a canvas, just one color or one dot, or just, you know, some inflatable toilet thing.
Yeah.
And he was telling me the story about some guy who just randomly went to a parking lot in a museum, I think, and duct taped. Like, he put duct tape and like a crisscross motion in one of the parking spaces, and nobody parked there for a month because they thought that this was a piece of art. And this just showed how ridiculous modern art is, right? It was like, maybe this guy actually did make art. Maybe there is something to be said. I mean, even if that had been a Sainsbury's parking lot, I wouldn't have parked there. I would have been like, there must be a reason why there's duct tape there, and I'm not going to risk a fine. But yeah, maybe that speaks to what the goal of art might be now that it has sort of changed, right? It's not necessarily about the message behind it, the lesson behind the myth, or the adoration of Jesus, but the reaction that it invokes in people. Yeah,
because I guess as well, like from like Renaissance art, which obviously I think is incredible because it could be a photograph, but then you have to take the time. Historically they didn't have cameras, so obviously artists had a totally different way of painting because they're trying to capture either the kings, the queens, or the lords, or like moments of history that are happening, or the context of like a war. So I feel like whereas now obviously everything has become more digital and we have, you know, great quality cameras and stuff, I think we have seen a massive shift in the way art is drawn and the way people appreciate art and the way people want art. Because also realistically, again, when I was at Christie's, like old masters and Renaissance didn't sell very well. There wasn't I know there wasn't.
You can send them to me.
I know there wasn't as much of a market for it because when you think about it, not many people think in their cool home a nice, you know, picture of Jesus being stabbed is going to be with blood coming out.
Oh my god,
it's going to be great.
Literally behind my computer screen right now, I have a postcard of a painting of Jesus in Peru, and it's got the backstory of it is quite grim because apparently the master painter that was painting it, he couldn't quite get the expression right of Jesus like dying while being crucified, and he actually crucified one of his students.
Oh my god.
And yeah, but it's a really beautiful painting. I mean,
you'll be
grim story. But...
I feel like you can be the number one buyer in Old Masters. I think.
I think so.
You are the market.
I need my millions. Yeah, I could put them somewhere.
Oh, they don't go for millions
cool
anymore.
Modern house.
You can.
They don't.
A lot of them you can get for maybe a few $100,000.
Oh my god. Okay, so I just need somebody to give me
a few $100,000.
If somebody's in the market for a trophy wife and wants to buy me some old masters.
Oh my god, it's true though. I feel like it's just kind of done a switch up completely. But the other article I wanted to mention as well was this article in ArtNet titled like most people can't tell the difference between art made by humans and art made by AI. And the general like consensus of the article is just talking about the worry that, you know, AI is going to kind of take away the humanity in in drawing and in art, and that it's not going to have the real, I guess, human touch. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on this.
So I think this is really interesting. I think last summer I got quite into the idea of art made by AI, and I think there's sort of the problem there for me is that we're giving the AI itself too much agency in terms of its ability to create art.
Mm-hmm.
Like any art that's created by AI is going to be based on some input, right? Like AI doesn't like poof come up with an idea. So I think in that sense we need to think about AI more as a medium than as the creator of art itself.
Yeah.
So for me that's like thing number one. So in a way, AI is maybe not that different. Like creating art through AI is not that different from creating art through Photoshop or something like that. Which, by the way, I think a lot of the features on Photoshop are technically AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. I also think that, like I was saying before, for me the idea behind art is to create something beautiful. And when I look at the picture that's in the article, so it is La Baronne de Bellamy. Excuse my French. And this is an AI created painting by Obvious Art. And I like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
So I guess, yeah, the other issue here is, so there's one, the issue of whether AI can author anything, but also I guess it comes into what makes art art. What does it mean for something to be art? Why is a dot in the middle of a canvas art and not the doodles that I make when I'm trying to work? And
yeah.
So I think those are sort of the two questions. For me, the AI authoring things, I would want to keep the credit with the artist. So it's either the person that built the AI, or if it's several people, then for me they're the people that are really creating the art, because you also, like I said, you probably have to decide on something that you're giving the AI for it to produce art. And I think that could, I mean, that's actually an interesting idea, because when you think about the religious paintings, it wasn't the artists, like a lot of them were commissioned by the churches and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
in this case, the artist is taking the place of the AI, right? You give it an input, which is the message, the like passage of the Bible or something that you want to create, and then they sort of reinterpret it and output a beautiful painting. Or not a beautiful one. It could be a bad artist.
Could be ugly.
Yeah. But yeah, I still think that, for me, and I keep wanting to make an episode where we talk about what AI actually means. AI is a matter of statistics, basically, and so I don't believe that statistics can really capture that art. Sorry, I'm like having this like whole monologue. But yeah.
No, I completely get what you're saying. I think so. The article's talking about this researcher Harsha Ganga Butler, and the research is from Harsha is basically kind of looking at how we're going to perceive art now, and I think some of it I think is maybe over dramatized a tiny bit. Maybe what we were talking about before about what you just said about putting too much in machines and AI being able to do this all alone. So I think this article is kind of emphasizing that it's going to take the kind of human touch to art out of it. But I agree with you. Essentially, to me, I'm like, is AI not just another tool that an artist is using? So in many ways, what is the difference as a tool of a paintbrush and the actual paint itself, or the tool of some pottery and clay, a certain type of tool you're using? What's the difference really from AI? Is this not another tool that say myself, I may view myself as an artist, go off, create create an AI system and then can output certain art, then I don't see, in a way, like you were saying, what is the difference really? For even, like you were saying, comparing it to those people who were commissioned to interpret Jesus in a certain way. So I think I get it. I think it's because it's a new. I think people still don't really get AI, which we've already spoken about before. And then I think people find the idea of AI and machines quite scary. So I think it's this whole idea again, like, oh my God, robots will be the ones doing the art, and people will not have any credit for it. But I think essentially, surely, like, the person who used AI as a tool is going to get the credit for that painting, and they would have had the AI can't do it without some human input. So I think for me, I'm like, it's just another form of creativity. Do I necessarily think that I would buy some of this art? I don't know. It may be, because I actually think that painting that's there is really nice.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me of this one time my sister sent me this really funny, those like historical art memes where they take a painting and add like a caption. And I found it was a hilarious one. I don't remember what it was, but I tried to print it so I could put it in my corkboard thing on my office, and it came out just completely pixelated with like these giant pixels. But it looked really cool. Like, I was like, okay, I mean, it's not what I wanted, but it looks cool and artsy. So that painting kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, I think talking about AI making art and AI generated art, I feel like it really is sort of a slippery slope where we're not only forgetting that it's a human that built the AI, but also that it's a human that has to give input to the AI to output. Like the painting that's here, it looks to me like they took an original painting, threw it into the AI, and it did some blending and all of that, and then something else came out, right?
Switched up, yeah.
Yeah, like, so I don't think at any of those points we can say that it's the AI specifically that made the art, but rather the person who designed the AI, because we've talked about bias in AI so much, so we know that there's all these deliberate design decisions that go into making an AI system. And that is all work that to me feeds into the artwork. Deciding, if we're talking, we're talking about training this, what data are you using to train it with? What is the goal of the training? And then what is the input that you're even giving this thing? All of these are decisions that a human has made, not an AI. And so I think, it's almost to me bordering on irresponsible. And I think probably the point of the study is more about if we did have AI that could generate art, and the idea that somehow the soul is removed. But if you're building an AI system that is meant to make art, are you not putting that part of your soul into that? Like, I would imagine that a lot of the art that this AI thing makes is going to be relatively similar in some ways, right? So it might look different, but it's going to have certain features. And again, the person that chooses the input is also, there's some soul that's going into that, quote unquote soul. So I also can't agree with this idea that they're talking about in the paper, or in the article, that you would expect human generated art to have more soul than AI generated art.
Yeah. And also, like, the fact that kind of in the article saying that it was kind of worrying that in the study that humans couldn't tell the difference between the machine made art and the human made. And I think it's interesting how they've made a point of being like the machine made and the human made. Is it not essentially all both human made, like we were saying? I think I don't know, it's a tiny bit, like we're saying, tiny bit over dramatizing. But I think they were saying this the study like came off the back of that that AI art selling at Christie's for like almost 500,000, and I think that was probably like because it was like such a big deal for. I think it was like kind of labeled as this AI artwork that was sold at such a high price, when really, like you were saying, it's someone who's made the decisions, has inputted the data, has been the artist behind that. You can't really ultimately be like that was a machine that made that piece of artwork. All in all, I think it's an interesting concepts. I think. The future now, you know, like I think like now that Christie's, they're such like a leader in obviously art auctions, the fact they've now sold that digital art for 70 million, and they've had more and more like AI art auction pieces, and Sotheby's have as well now. I think it's just going to keep on going from here, really. There's obviously a clear market for it now as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really interesting in terms of the ownership of the art, who owns it, right? If we're claiming that it's actually AI generated,
then who owns it?
Does the AI? Yeah. It's kind of like do you remember the picture of that monkey, the monkey that took the selfie, and they were in court for years and years appealing, and who, you know, did the monkey own the zoo? Did the person who owned the camera? So I wonder if something like that is coming for AI.
It must do.
But it's also, for me, I think, you know, I'm always talking about the concern I have with it's sort of like the overhype of AI and this like strange idea that we have of AI. And so for me, like this is what I think about, is this problem of overly humanizing AI and overly having like too high expectations of what AI can do, and at the same time seriously underestimating what AI can do in terms of, you know, how happy people are to share their data. So this is such an interesting case, and like I'm looking forward to like its career. Like I'm looking at its career with great. I'm gonna follow the career of AI generated art with great interest.
No, so am I. I think.
But I wonder if the idea of like AI generated art partly added value to that piece of art that was sold at Christie's for half.
Definitely.
Like I wonder if I was like, I just made this in Photoshop, exactly the same.
Oh no, definitely. It definitely adds like a little something to it, doesn't it? Like, oh. Especially when it's like one of the first. I think it was actually the first piece of AI art to sell on the auction market. So I think that definitely would have added the hype to it for sure.
So
I actually think we're coming up on our time. You know.
Oh,
look at us! It goes by quick every time.
It does. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Yeah. Let us know what you think about AI generated art, and is it a medium? Is it an author?
Yeah. Who is the artist? Is it the machine? You don't have to agree with us. It might be a totally different opinion.
Yeah. Actually, you can tweet at us at Let's Chat Ethics with your thoughts on this topic, and if you want us to discuss any other topics as well.
Yeah, and we will be back. We're having next week off
we'll be busy eating
for Easter. We'll be back the week after Easter, so we'll hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you then, guys.
See you next week. No, not next week, the week after. Bye.
Bye.